Welcome, Carey. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Why don't you give a little bit of a introduction, who you are and what you've been up to?
Sure. So a little bit of background on me. Spent about 27 years as an employee working for all types of companies and all types of industries. But the type of work I was doing is usually just transformation work or implementation. Usually it was technology implementation. And my role was a project manager, actually developer, then project manager, then program manager. And I've also had a couple opportunities in leadership roles for development, custom software development places. So a lot of exposure to that, but um, you get trapped into things where you get a little raise or you get a promotion, you go to a new job, and you think things are going to be better. For me, I always had this entrepreneurial type desire to build something to for myself. And it was just not meaningful for me to just be working for somebody else as an employee. I just didn't want to do that. But I kept on coming up with excuses. That's easy to do for a very, very long time on, why, oh, it's not the right time. Right. So it was about 2 years ago now, almost exactly, where I was at the last full-time job I was working, which was at Indeed as a program manager. For as far as jobs go, it was a good job, probably one of the best I've had. But it still wasn't, satisfying my entrepreneurial desires. And so I had a little bit of money saved, and I decided to just go for it and try to build something for myself. So that was 2 years ago, and a lot has happened in those 2 years. So I'm happy to dive right into it. Or if you had some other questions before I did that, let me know.
No, yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I think when we met, I was still in my 9 to 5 and thinking about making a jump. Um, so before we sort of jump into your story, I was just wondering what was the light bulb for you uh, that gave you the sort of the umph to be able to take that action? Because like you said, a lot of people tell themselves stories of this is not the right moment. And coincidentally, I was at Indeed yesterday uh, here in Austin, Texas. So I can see how, especially in a company like that, you can be very comfortable. Like,
Mhm.
you go, they have lunch for you, they have an espresso bar for you, they have everything so that you have very limited excuses to have to want to leave, right? Or
Yeah.
to want to leave. So what was it? What gave you that urge to leave? I mean, I know the urge, but what gave you the
Yeah.
initiative?
Well, I would say that I've never had a job that provided comforts like Indeed, but even those comforts, they're nice, but they're not right for everybody, right? So if you have an entrepreneurial drive, it doesn't matter what niceties they have for you. It doesn't equal entrepreneurial when you do that. And the excuses that I had for years going up to that had more to do with my family life and social life than it did with the job itself. I was never satisfied with the job itself, but my excuses came from this is the right time for me. It had to deal with where I was living, who I was with at the time, and And like, if you want to do something entrepreneurial, you have got to be able to live below your means. And I was not doing a very good job of that for the longest time. So I know the moment that I realized that it was possible. And I have been doing this now for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. I have this Google sheet that I created that is a 3-year forecast for all my income and expenses. and it's gotten better and more accurate over the years. And I redo it because I don't know, I'm into spreadsheets like that. So every couple 2 or 3 months, and it was in springtime 2 years ago, and I'd gone through the exercise. And at that time, a lot of those things that were excuses for me were gone or going away. And I looked at the result and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have like a 2-year runway.
Hmm.
I could do this, I could really do this." And if I really throw myself at something, I feel like if that's all I focused on, then it wouldn't even take 2 years before I can at least break even. Or even if I didn't break even, I would still extend the runway a little bit, even more than 2 years. So that it was that moment I realized I could do this and I should do it. And that's when I decided I decided early in the spring that I would quit my job around May or June or something like that. And that's what I did. And then because I knew in like March or February that that was going to be my plan, I started putting the pieces in place to launch my first business. And this wasn't the first time that I had tried to launch my own business. I would say it's been about 4 or 5 years, well, whatever, 2020, early 2020, when COVID hit. It was 2019 where I, I joined forces with a technical co-founder. It's one of the most brilliant architects that I've ever worked with in all the years of working with technical folks. We decided that we would co-found a SaaS B2B company. And there was a whole lot of development that had to go into it. So there was a lot of front end work that he did, but it finally got to a point to where, we needed to do more than just development. And that was my role. Like, okay, I do everything but development. And it was literally, I had a job at the time. I'd been with them for like 5 or 6 years. And I quit that job to launch this SaaS technology startup. And then COVID happened a week later. So it was just horrible timing. We had a very large client, an enterprise client lined up to buy, to really use 300 employees were going to use our application. It turned out it was a casino and a resort. And when
Hmm.
COVID happened, man, those were the first things they shut down. So they had actually closed their doors, and then trying to find customers after that was just impossible. So we we decided to kind of end it, and we agreed on how we were going to end it and everything like that. But then it was time to move on. So that was my first foray, maybe in early 2020. But it was 2 years ago when I decided that I would put everything into this and start something of my own as opposed to co-founding something. So before I dive in, do you want me to dive into that story and talk about the different things that happened in the 2 years, or is there something else you want to know before I do that?
No, I think you can just dive in. I mean, let's maybe split it up into parts, right? Like, well, once you like, what was your very first move when you left your job?
Yeah.
What was the
Well,
intention?
my
What
my
company
first
were you
move.
going to start?
Mhm. Well, my first move was actually while I was still employed, because there was a bunch of behind the scenes that stuff that I can do. So you
Mhm.
just happened to be catching me with my Rouse Fit emblem on my embroidered jacket. So I started a fitness company called Rouse Fit. And I had done personal training on the side for like, not consistently, but 20 years. So fitness is a big deal for me. And I thought, okay, I can do this personal training, but I want to do it virtually. I can do check-ins with Zoom, and I can do it that way, and then I can make meal plans for people because I've had some success in what I do for myself, so I wanted to replicate that for others. So I did that for a while, and then um, I had customers, had people lined up in the summer, and it was during the summer that I read. Um, uh,
12 months from now.
yeah, yeah. So I read the book, and then I realized, oh, I need to have a product. I don't have a product. I just have
Right, right.
services. And so I immediately started thinking about what kind of product could pair with the fitness company. And I had had a personal experience with CBD products in the past where I
Mm,
had some injuries and they simply just went away. I mean, I couldn't believe that putting a cream on my elbow would do anything, but it did. And so I was super impressed with that. And it's a product that I have used and would swear by it for certain kind of injuries. And it was related to lifting weights. So I started doing a bunch of research. I contacted a manufacturer. I got figuring out what my labels were going to be, and getting a license for in the state of Texas to be able to do
mm,
that, and starting setting up my Shopify website and starting to get inventory ready to go. And that took a lot of my time and attention. But to me, that was more scalable. If I could get it to work, that's more scalable than spending my time trying to do even virtual personal training. And so I decided that I would switch from 100% personal training and meal planning to about 90% CBD, and 10% of my time would be spent on trying to still kind of keep that personal training thing afloat. It was, I don't know, February of like last year, I think, where I maybe earlier, and I found out something a little bit too late, and I should have found out about this earlier. So it's completely on me. But having never done a product company, I didn't realize how important, especially an online product company. It didn't realize the importance of being able to properly advertise online and on all of the platforms. And as it turns out, CBD, I think to this day, is still considered a drug that you cannot advertise for on,
mm.
any of the platforms. And I didn't know that. And I thought I could still make it work with, local word of mouth, joined a BNI group, but there was just limited stuff that you could do online. And you know how it is working with a Facebook or somebody like that. You could put an ad up and you don't even have anything on there that you think breaks any kind of rules. And they have a bot that comes by and it says, "Oh no, now your account's blocked. You can't talk to anybody." And so I just didn't want to try to roll the dice. Some people, they do. They roll the dice. They hope that they don't get shut off. But if they were to shut me off completely, then I wouldn't have any ability to even share anything. So
Mhm.
I struggled through that for a while, and I tried all different types of things. I mean, I reached out to I used the virtual assistant to reach out to hundreds and hundreds of um, influencers, and trying to find somebody to partner with to help um, sell the CBD products. But that did not go anywhere. And I tried to do some deal where you get involved. You can get your product into actual stores, and there's a process for that, and that didn't go anywhere. S- And I was
What was
trying
your
to,
process? So what was your process for reaching out to Instagram influencers? What what was the um, idea that you were postulating to them? You know.
Well, it was kind of a script where you start off just, liking their liking and engaging in their channel, and then, giving them compliments about, basically giving them high fives and compliments, and finding a way to, like, hey, is there anything I can do to help your channel? And then eventually if you establish a relationship, you could suggest that one way you could do that is through your product, if it's something that they believe in. And generally that'd be like, look, here are just some free samples of it. Here's some free
Hmm.
samples and let me know what you think. And sometimes that was closer to the beginning than not, because that would be, look, I'm willing to just give you some free product. I would love to get your feedback on it. And that's it. And then wait for those that do have a good experience with it. And then we would talk about the possibility of having them set up as an affiliate for us. So that was the technique. I There's some very specific scripts that were shared with me that I was using, but that's generally how the conversation would go.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you if it's, I still did a poor job of doing that, or the script could have been better, or maybe the people I was talking to were not the right people. But whatever the combination was, it just wasn't working for me.
I think
Um,
about a
I
year
know others have it.
ago. Uh, uh,
Go ahead.
yeah, about a year ago, I think we spoke. And at the time, I believe you were still working on your CBD project. And one frustration that you communicated to me is that you don't quite understand, like, you didn't quite understand how, people just scroll through Instagram, like, that's not something that you do personally. So,
Yeah.
did you ever sort of get through that or figure that out, or work on that? Or what was your strategy because I guess when you said that you couldn't post anything about CBD, did you go down that avenue at all, or and try to explore it more, or did you just cut that off?
The things that I could post on social media really related more to fitness.
Mhm,
And that was pretty easy for me. I could post. I mean, I had a system set up where I would do shorts or something, occasional long, and then I would send them to. I'd have a process to get it into all the platforms. That was the other thing that happened. I was on all the platforms, and it was burning me out. It's just
mhm,
total burnout. Even though it was like the same content, there's always certain hoops and things you got to go through to get it onto each content. They do have some platforms that supposedly share it with all the platforms out there. I found that they don't work. There's always some thing, oh, it never showed up on Facebook for some reason. Or um, I believe that when they're posted to those sites through a third party and not directly through you, the platforms know that, and then they don't provide as much visibility of those things to your audience or others, because they know you're not posting it. So
hmm.
that's the impression I got. But yeah, I did get to the point to where I was posting every day on every platform, but it was just fitness stuff, not the CBD.
That's interesting because that's something that I felt the exact same way. I was using a platform to post on YouTube, Instagram, whatever else platform, um, and it definitely burnt me out, and I feel like I wasn't posting as much. So I'm at the point where I'm posting directly on only Instagram, and I've been way more consistent about
Mhm.
putting out content, and but I'm curious if there's any backing to what you noticed about putting it through a third party platform. I wonder if that somehow affects the algorithm, like you're saying. I'd be curious to do more research on that. I guess that was just in
Yeah.
your intuition rather than actual something you found
Yeah,
out?
I don't have any true deep analytics that could prove
Right,
that out. So it's anecdotal. I don't know for sure.
right. I mean,
Um,
that doesn't devalue the anecdote, right? So,
yeah,
um,
so it's definitely possible, but um, I was just trying to figure out like what's going on here. But there's also a lot of competition for fitness stuff, right? I mean, my gosh, there's tons of competition and it's good competition. So trying to get eyeballs on your stuff is just it's tough, you know.
mhm.
Um, CBD, if I were to get it out there, there aren't as many, but that's just because it's illegal right now. So, um, but I went through that process and I realized that it just wasn't going to grow. I mean, I put um, several months into doing everything I could. I even reached out to an organization who they put on the tournaments for pickleball tournaments. So when a pickleball tournament happens, this company is contacted and they do all of the registration and sign up and everything
Mm,
and logistics. So they are plugged into like hundreds of pickleball clubs and groups all around the US. They have at least one competition every single weekend. And I could get on a special vendor list with them where I could get my free samples out to, they would have a goodie bag for all the players. And so I did that for a while, thinking, look, how it couldn't be any better than this. Getting somebody giving a pain cream to a person who could literally use it the moment that they get it for something to see a difference. And it's probably a combination of maybe the formulation that we had just wasn't good. Because I didn't have access to the same formulation that I used on myself personally, but I tried to get as close to that as possible with the manufacturer I was working with, but maybe it simply wasn't effective enough for it to make a difference for people. So eventually I realized, I was just continuing to spend more per month than what I was making. And I could only go on so much longer with that. So it was, I don't know, March or something like that of last year, where I made a deal with my manufacturer. They wanted to keep the brand and wanted my customer list and everything. So I decided to sell the brand to them. Now, we said we were going to partner, but I didn't want to really put any more time into it. I said, you can sell my stuff and give me a cut of it. And they were going to add their own stuff to my website. And we agreed to the deal, but then as I suspected, it didn't really pan out that way. I mean, they didn't really put any effort into it. So, you know, got out of that. And then um, fitness is something that I'm passionate about, but like training people isn't really what I'm passionate about. I mean, it's related to fitness. So what I wanted to do is get a little bit closer to one of the passions, another passion of mine, and that's racing cars. Now, I had been racing cars, amateur racing, grassroots racing for the last couple of years leading up to that. But now I couldn't use my extra money for racing. I needed it to use to build a business.
mm,
So I switched gears and decided I would follow a different passion of mine, which is serving the racing community because I really like the people I've met through racing. And I was at the time it was like, what can I do to build an audience? I want to build an audience. I want it to be the racing audience, and what can I do for that? And something that I had never done before was podcasts, and I was a little bit intimidated by it, but it was one of the easiest things that I did. The reason it made it easy is just like when you reached out to me, people love to talk about themselves, especially people who race cars. And it was so easy for me to just walk up to a stranger, tell them I've got a racing podcast and YouTube channel, and would love to interview them. And so I had a mobile kit like yours, but I mean, it was tough because I am traveling from track to track around the US, almost from one weekend to the next. And, I'm going to series. I don't know anybody. I don't know a single person there. And so just kind of getting started, first day was, maybe one or two interviews. But by the end, you get into a rhythm. And when you're interviewing at a track, it is so loud. But so I had to have a special setup to make it work. But even then, having the background noise was kind of cool in the podcast, but a little bit too much is not cool. So there was a whole lot of editing that I was doing. But I mean, I totally committed to this. I sold my car. I bought a truck, I don't like trucks, and an RV trailer. And I had never pulled a trailer in my life. And I remember leaving Austin to go to my first race, and it was in Virginia. So I don't know what that is, 1,600 miles or something. It's like, well, here we go. Have never pulled a trailer, and I'm pulling this RV trailer behind a truck that was probably too big for the truck. But I did it, just went. Um, it is funny because the very first night, while still driving, I had a blowout in the trailer on a dangerous highway where I could not fix the tire on the side of the road. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm somewhere in Mississippi, and I managed to get it to a way station. And I was like, well, it is an RV. I think I'll just spend the night here because I couldn't get anybody to help me when I was stranded.
I guess my next question was, what was going through your head, right? I mean, you basically dropped everything you had. I was sort of in a similar situation where I've been traveling around, and people don't realize, like, at least because we can call you a digital nomad at that point a little bit, right? Like it's maybe different than what most people would think about because you stayed stateside, but uh, it's exhausting, like traveling around constantly and never having an actual place to call home. So, what was going through your head? And because I remember you right before you took off is when I last saw you, and you were excited. You had bought this truck. You were ready to do all your podcasts. And yeah, so what was going through your head, and how was that
Well,
first experience? Yeah.
I mean, I was definitely still excited. I loved getting to the racetracks and meeting some of the people. I met some amazing people. Some of the people I've interviewed are just like, man, I want to see what they do because it was just such interesting stories to hear how they started, all that they had to do to get where they were at. And in other cases, it was very, very amateur, but everyone had a little bit different story. I was excited about it. I just loved the atmosphere. What I it really wasn't anything that I minded about it. I liked being on the road. It was a lot of work, but there's one thing about me. Typically, when I do something, it's just like total commitment and focus to that thing. And I moved on from whatever was there before. This is my focus. So um, it's my preferred way of like embracing something. And like I finished about 175 interviews in 4 months, all at different locations. Um, the other thing that made it difficult is because I was traveling, I only had, cell phone service. And I'm working with files that people don't understand, like 6, 7 gig. I'm having to upload and download and edit and make a copy and move it to because that was on YouTube and a podcast. Now the podcast's easy, that's just audio. Those files are small. But sometimes I would queue up all these all these files, and I would have to spend 48 hours just to get all of them loaded and print on whatever site that I was going to be on. So that it was a lot of work. It was a heck of a lot of work when you're dealing with video. I also learned that it doesn't need to be perfect. At first, I was trying to edit everything. There was a loud noise. Like I just kept, at some point, just kept on going, and there wasn't really a need to do a whole lot of editing. Now, I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I didn't have the luxury with all the time I spent, driving and setting up and everything to do a ton of editing.
Did you have
But
a VA to help you edit?
no,
Mm.
no. I had, the thing was, I would still have to. I I recorded everything locally on like an SD card. So just the process to get that someplace was one of the hardest things to do and time consuming. And also, if there was a bit of editing, it's really a judgment call on on my part. So I didn't feel comfortable giving anybody else that stuff to do. I did have a system down, and it was probably as fast as it could possibly be, but it still took a lot of time. But what was interesting was it was sometime in the summer, and I had built up so many podcasts. I was releasing 4 podcasts a week. And with all of them that I had built up, I had enough to continue to upload and publish 4 podcasts a week until December. And so I took the opportunity to make a change. A couple of things happened to me. One was my dad passed away this last summer, and I was on the road right before that happened. So I managed to spend the last couple of weeks with him, and that was good. But that essentially, took me off the road, which was fine. But then I started thinking about other things, and one thing as it related to what I was doing was the RV trailer was just falling apart. Like they're not meant to travel with. I don't know why you would ever travel with it. It's like a cardboard box. So things kept on breaking for me. So I decided, look, I have these episodes built up that could get me through December. What if I buy a cargo van and make a camper van out of it? Because I can definitely downsize. I thought that the RV was too big for me, and just a truck plus an RV there's only so many places you can take that. So I wanted a van. So it was time to do van life, and I went out, and as most things are, I found something and I just bought it. And I decided that I'd start working on it, but I needed a place to stay to work on it. Plus, I didn't have all the tools to work on it. And I did a bunch of searching, and I ended up finding a family that lives an hour and a half in the country outside of Austin on a farm, 10-acre farm, and they have a couple of little cabins that they Airbnb out. And my condition was I rent the Airbnb from you for, however long it takes me to build this thing, but I need access to your big barn to do the work. And it was a great setup. So I, three-sided barn, one was open. So you're not in the rain, but you're definitely exposed to the elements. I remember when I first got out there, it was 105 degrees almost every day here last summer. And that's when I started on it. And then through the winter, it was freezing quite a bit. And so I've been in all the extremes, working out outside, working on the van. I had never done anything like that. I put gas in my car. That's about that's about it. I don't mess with anything else. And so this was like, I'm just going to figure it out. And there's a bunch of YouTube channels out there on everything. And you pick and choose what makes sense for you. And then I just kind of designed. I had idea of generally what I wanted to do, and but the actual design work was literally just one component at a time because of the time constraint, the space constraints inside of the RV. But I feel like I did it pretty fast. I mean, took longer than I thought it would. It ended up taking 5 months.
Always does.
And yeah, but I worked very hard at that. I never, occasionally I took a day off because I was seeing family or something like that. But um, I estimated, because this is the other thing. When I was doing it, I was documenting it. I was doing
Mm.
about 7 shorts every day, and then a long at the end of the day, about 10 minutes that summarize the day. I was posting that stuff up, and people were enjoying it, and it was growing, but it wasn't growing to where it was like, yeah, this is an audience that's big enough that I can monetize. Also, I feel like an audience of people who watch shorts is like useless, just useless. I mean, that's where all my subscribers were coming from YouTube, and you should just consider those zero. I mean, in fact, YouTube
For what
considers
purpose?
them to monetize it eventually.
Hmm.
I wanted to
Oh,
get to where
to
I could
monetize the
monetize it.
YouTube channel?
2 things: monetize the channel, and also just in general, can you sell stuff to them at some point in time?
Hmm.
And I was not going to hit the YouTube monetization metrics with. Um, I was climbing so with the long format I use for racing, but I grew really fast with subscribers, but they were all short subscribers, and those don't count towards monetization unless you have like 10 million in 3
Hmm.
months or something like. So I decided that, and it was also halfway through the build that I realized. I looked at the analytics. My channel just wasn't going to grow fast enough to monetize. It couldn't monetize through YouTube, and I didn't have enough money to continue to do what I would do to try to get it to Reifile. And I had not seen like a hockey stick thing, right? It was
Hmm.
pretty linear. If I did twice as many videos, I got twice as many people, but I just didn't have any repeat viewers. People like to watch it once and that's it. And so it was in the middle of the build where I realized I couldn't continue the channel. Otherwise, I was just going to end up, pissing away all that money. And I decided that I would have to do something else, but I needed to finish the van because that was going to be where I lived once I got done. So I went ahead and finished it. It was probably an average of 10 hours a day. I know it was 150 days because that's how many days of video. It was 85 and whatever it was. So 1,500 hours later, I finished with that van. It is awesome. It is awesome. Um, I I was shocked that everything worked. I couldn't believe it. You know. So I haven't had a single issue with it. And then I started living in it as soon as I was done with it at the end of February of this year. And so it was March and April. You're just barely getting into May. So I lived in it in March and April. I also found an opportunity at a startup here in Austin, and it really sounded like a dream job for me because it would allow me to be entrepreneurial in the business, like truly be. And lots of responsibility, ability to impact culture, and I get to do about anything I want. So I started it, but there was one issue with it. It's a startup pre-funding. They don't have their funding yet, and if they don't get their funding, then I might work for free and never get paid. 'Cause I decided to jump straight in. It's another one of those things I do. I wasn't going to just dip my toe in. I went full bore, 12 hours a day, every day for a startup that I didn't know if I'd get paid for. But I knew that it was a risk worth taking because on the backside of that, if things worked out, it was going to be really, really special for me. Probably the first job I've
So
ever
you
had where I felt. Go
continue.
ahead.
No, continue.
Oh, okay. First job that I had that really would tick all the boxes for me.
Mm.
And I put a post out on Facebook that you saw. maybe a week ago or so. And the post was, I finally got paid. So,
Nice.
um, things are looking good for the startup, and at least that was my first paycheck in 2 years. Um, I mean, I got money from revenue from the um, other companies, but not just like a steady paycheck. So, um, it made a big difference. And now, like I said, things are working out, and I am super, super excited about it and extremely happy. And I've been able to find that in a job versus like my own company. I'm going to have equity in the company, so it is mine in that sense. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. But um, my friends and family know that, well, just what's going to happen in 2 months. I don't know. I am currently selling my RV, and as soon as I do that, I'm just going to move into a condo here downtown, so I'm close to the office, and I'm not going to have a car for maybe a couple years. So that'll be a new experience for me.
Yeah. So
But
your idea with the van, because I might have skipped a beat there, where when you initially started building out your van, it was your intention to head back out to interviews for the race channel? And so then you
yeah,
just
it
found this
was.
opportunity and decided, hey, this is a better option.
Well, it was in the middle of at the beginning of the van build. The van was to get me back on the road to interview race fans and racers. Halfway through the build, I realized the channel was not growing fast enough and it would not grow. So I decided that I could not continue that, but I wasn't ready to look for anything else because like every day, all day long, all I did is work on the van until it was done. And as I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I think I'm going to be finished with it like in 3 weeks. That's when I started looking for something else to do. And at that point, I didn't have the money to start my own thing. And I know you can start your own business with no money. I've attempted that so many times in the last few years, and I was like, okay, let's get a steady paycheck, and then I'll look into doing something for myself. But it just so happens that the steady paycheck I'm getting also satisfies all the other entrepreneurial checkboxes that I have, and I don't need anything else. So I got lucky. But I mean, I had to commit 2 months without pay and without promise of pay. Um, when, and I'm living in a van and I don't have that much in savings. So it was a risk, but um, worth it for me.
And you say steady paycheck, but in reality, has it, it has a different feeling than if it was your previous, 2 years ago sort of company, right? It's not the same thing. I mean, because I feel like there's definitely a um, sort of a tinge of, or the lack of monotony, right? Like, one thing
Mhm.
that I've noticed in like trying to, like, let's say you're trying to hire somebody nowadays, especially, just the promise of money is not enough anymore, right? There has to be money and purpose. And I think more people are valuing the purpose side of things. Um, so, you know, it, I understand where you're coming from with, steady paycheck, but I think the difference there is that there's a purpose to it, right? Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, um, I I would say that the purpose for me is I'm getting a substantial amount of responsibility to build something and influence the building of something.
Mhm.
And that is meaningful to me. Um, in the past, it was just you're a cog, you do this thing. Eventually, it's going to make more money for some other people. Then we want you to continue doing that. In this case, there's even more to that. Like, well, I'm part of the company. Like
Skin in the game.
yeah, I'm in the I have enough equity in the company that it makes a substantial difference if the company does well or not. So I really care about that. Yeah, and the other part of it is in the past, it was always like, this is your role, and this is the thing that you do over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Hmm.
My role is do everything, and I love that. So as we bring on more people, there may be more specialization for folks. That's just natural. But I feel like this role for me will keep me jumping around a lot for indefinitely, I feel. So,
So I
and I
take it
just,
you're the
just
type of person, you're the type of person that sort of gets bored with a certain type of task quickly, I would say. I mean, I fall under the same category. So I don't see it as a negative. I just see it as, I mean, those are usually the type of people that are more entrepreneurial, right? They're where it's not, I mean, they can focus on a particular task, but um, like for example, me, once I've figured out how to do something, I'm done. I'm moving on to the next item, you know? So I'm curious if you sort of
Mhm.
fall under that category.
um, I would say that if doing said thing over and over and over really just benefits somebody else and not
Yeah.
me, I can get very bored with it. But if doing something over and over and over again is making me money, well, I'm going to do it 4 times as much and 10 times as much and just continue to double down because it's helping me in some way. It's meaningful to me. Um, that's, cause that's what I was doing with the content creation for these other opportunities. It's just that it wasn't resulting in an upside for me. So I
Hmm.
couldn't continue to do that. Um, so I would add that caveat. I do get tired of doing the same thing over and over again if it's just benefiting somebody else.
I might reflect on that myself. But what would you say? Uh, I just have a couple more questions for you, but what would you say to somebody, uh, especially nowadays? You know, you get sort of influx of all these entrepreneurs online, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. What would you recommend to somebody that's, you know, very young, like just maybe fresh out of college or something, and sort of has this idea in their head, has never done anything really, but never had like a actual job. And I mention that because I want to, like, I definitely don't regret having had a job because I feel like it gives you certain skills, discipline, things like that. Um, but yeah, what would be your recommendation? I think people sometimes jump the gun a little bit too. So I just wanted to be the devil's advocate there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is unless you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, or lawyer, I think college is a complete waste of time and money. And they should be focusing on online training in some way. Um, I would suggest maybe a couple things. Try a lot of different stuff, right? Try a lot of different things and see what are the things that are just fun for you that you could do over and over and over again. Um, and and also just know that like 95% of what the crap you see online with promises of, riches and all this other stuff is that's what sells. That's what gets eyeballs. So that's why it exists. It doesn't exist because it actually works. Um, it exists to just get eyeballs. And so you sure there's some stuff that's real out there. Um, I will tell you, it's super hard to tell. It is so hard to tell. Um, Everyone will maybe claim for some reason or another why they're the real thing. And most of that stuff's just made up crap anyway. But just try some stuff. Um,
Trial and error.
Unless you just have a big financial backing, and, rich parents or whatever. There's only so many things you can do by going all in, failing, and then just starting again. So, um, find little things that you can do that you end up liking, and try to find a way to make money with that.
Beautiful. Well, last question would be if you have any book recommendations, anything you've read recently or a while back that you might recommend,
Um,
something influential for you. One or
yeah.
a couple or three if you'd like.
Um, the one book that started my, like, I have got to do something. I have got to do something for myself was, I think it's called The Millionaire Fast Lane or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and the same author, I can't remember his name. He did like 2 or 3 books. I read all of them, but reading that book just got me so excited that I'm not doing what I need to. I need to do something entrepreneurial. And it was that book that kind of got me amped up enough that, I needed to do something. So that was a big book for influence for me. Um, I find AI fascinating in how things are going to change so much faster than what we can imagine right now. So, I try to read stuff and watch videos related to AI and what the future is going to look like. There's an author there's a couple of authors that made a book called Abundance, and it came out, I don't know, 15 or 10 years ago or something like that. And that's the first book in a book of three. And then the last book they created was things are things are moving faster than you think, or things will move faster than you think. Something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But the same authors, same idea. They take a look at all the technologies and where we're at and what's happening and how life can be so incredibly awesome for us as we get into all this new technology. Um, I'm disappointed because that book came out in 2019, I think. And then COVID hit, and all this stuff has happened since then. So I can't wait for the next book because I want to know what they think about the advances that have happened in the last 3 years, which that has been the most mind blowing thing for me is seeing what's happened just in the last 3 years. So I can't wait to see what the predictions are from the next book.
Great. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. Books.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thanks so much again for joining me, Carey. It's great having a conversation with you, and I'm glad that you could share your story with us. So yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.